This is Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work called Frankenstein A.I., a modern play adaptation based on the 19th century novel by Mary Shelley. In this podcast series, we thought it would be interesting to discuss the stories and themes expressed in Frankenstein A.I. in greater detail, to not only deepen and enrich yours and our understanding, but for the sheer pleasure of it. Throughout the series, we'll talk with special guests and discuss things such as the morality and ethics around creating artificial general intelligence, whether AGI can be considered a friend or foe, hazard or tool, the value and quality of human relationships, transhumanism and what it means to be human, as well as the tensions between a creator and the created. What makes our podcast unique is that you'll also get an insider's look at the many artistic and production decisions that are made in putting together a theatrical production as we develop this original work. So sit back and settle in for a stimulating dive into deep ideas and the world of theater magic. Human or AI? AI or human? We're here today in this episode to talk about the quality and nature of human relationships and what does it mean to be human in light of AI technological development. And I'm joined by two new guests today. I'm very excited to have this conversation with both of them. I'm joined by Logan Indewey. Logan is an Ottawa-based performing artist who is a two-time alumni of Algonquin College, graduating with honors from both the performing arts and script writing programs. He has previously played the role of the officer in Ninth Hour's 2024 musical audio drama, Beauty Will Save the World. He also played 9 Inch Nails in Bisexual at the 2024 Ottawa Fringe Festival, Captain Phoebus de Chateaupart in Ninth Hour's 2024 production of The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Derek in Sell the Children, and then recently, the Right Honorable Joe Clark in the production 1979. Logan is a performing artist currently involved in the development of Frankenstein A.I., a new theatrical work. And so Logan's part of those workshops that we meet every week doing. So welcome, Logan, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Charlie. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. And I'm also joined by an older friend of mine, David Sherwin. David grew up in Picton, Ontario. Following high school, he attended the University of Toronto, majoring in psychology and minoring in English literature and history. A few years later, he enrolled in a 3 years Master of Divinity program at Emmanuel College through the University of Toronto. Over the last couple decades, David has served several congregations as an ordained minister of the United Church of Canada. In 2011, he began a new ministry called Faith and Arts Ottawa, which had a mission to help people engage in spiritual growth through the creative arts, which of course is right up our alley and fits well with our podcast. Faith and Arts Ottawa wrapped up in 2019. David currently works for the Ottawa Presbytery. David, welcome.
Thanks, Charlie. It's great to be here.
So I just can't wait to dive into some of these topics with you guys. And this is, of course, our fourth episode. So we've talked about, in the first episode, we talked about the story and context of the novel Frankenstein, and of course the adaptation of the play. We also the second podcast we talked about some of the technology of artificial general intelligence that's being developed, and also some of the ethical and moral dilemmas that come with that for the human species. And on our last episode, we talked about AI in the media and entertainment and in the arts, and what does it mean to be creative and be an artist in light of AI being also able to do some of those things. And we had a great discussion on that. And today I want to dig into human relationships and what makes them just so darn special. And all sorts of, and the quality of those and the nature of those. But also, let me start, I guess, with maybe an easy question. Have you ever read the book, Logan, by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein?
No, honestly, I haven't. I don't even Like the closest thing I've seen to Frankenstein is that old movie, what's it called? Frankenweenie, the one with the dog. So I am, to be honest, completely removed from the original Mary Shelley work.
Okay. So is your first experience then with the story is through the development of the play?
I would say so, yes.
Real experience with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. Then you have a fresh perspective on the story. Yeah. Okay. And what about you, David? Did you ever read it or study it?
No, I haven't read it. I'm familiar with the outline of the story just from popular culture and various adaptations and parodies and movies and so on. But I haven't read the original novel. No.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and so we're ninth hour as you know, Logan and David. Like we're working on developing this play, Frankenstein A.I, in which the creature that the doctor creates, it's set in a modern day or perhaps little futuristic context, in which the creature the doctor creates, instead of made out of body parts and like zapped into life with electricity, is an artificial general intelligence android, an embodied AI walking around, talking with people, filling in for different tasks, and spoiler alert, the creature is unleashed on society without as much forethought as perhaps was needed. So we're digging into that. So So let me first ask you, David, and we've had lots of conversations over the years about, relationships and the quality of those, but let's start with what even makes a human life valuable? Like, where can we get that? Yeah. Like, how do we know a human life is valuable? Like, why do we think a human life is valuable? In light of so many utilitarian interactions that we have with people and relationships that we have that are utilitarian, and sometimes with your employer or whatever. But what makes a human life valuable? Why give an individual dignity? What's the rationale to do so?
Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is that there are wide swaths of humanity and human institutions, governments, businesses, other sorts of institutions that don't think that human lives are very valuable. The kind of warfare and death dealing that we see around the world right now going on in Gaza, Ukraine, and other places is precisely because other things are valued over the human lives that are being lost in the tens of thousands. And so I think it's a really important question, and it's important all the time. So the question comes down to, do individual human lives have intrinsic value? Is there something about humans that means that each human has value, regardless of whether they have any utility, regardless of whether they're useful in any way?
Right.
And there are a bunch of answers to that question. The answer that I would give as a follower of Jesus and as a Christian is that all humans are intrinsically valuable, regardless of their age or stage of life, regardless of their ability or disability, regardless of any other quality that adheres to them, simply because by being human, they're children of God. So that's a belief that I have. That's a conviction I have, and from that conviction flows all kinds of ethical commitments and so on.
Right.
The same kind of value is given to human beings in non-religious secular culture in our democratic politics.
Sure.
When human beings are valued as citizens,
right,
and in our democratic political structures, at least in theory, all human beings are equally valuable and have value, and so have the right, for example, to elect their leaders and to choose and to help to shape the laws that govern society and so on. And so there's a lot of philosophical writing coming out of the Enlightenment, not based necessarily in a religious or Judeo-Christian ethic, that also lifts up the inherent dignity of the human person. So yes, I think that humans have value and dignity and are worthy, and that is inherent in being a human and not reliant on any other source, any external valuation.
Yeah, that's and it's a compelling spiritual worldview, right? To view humans as more than bags of bones and flesh. That and I've it's hard. And then the democratic democracy flowing from that, and it's like, my understanding is the history of the world. It's not always been the case that countries or kingdoms would have that value toward individual citizens.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it's also a struggle I find to formulate, and I've posed this question many times, to friends and stuff, and with good intention. Like it's hard to formulate sort of a rationale that is scientific, or one that's, I don't know, like one that's sort of based on, like, that doesn't have like a spiritual worldview to it, to why you should value the stranger, the person you don't know, the person you don't like, the person who's maybe even, harmful. It's hard to find a compelling rationale as to have intrinsic value or dignity for such a person outside of what you mentioned, David, is sort of like made in God's image, or just that this idea of like, because God sees them, I should too, or, in a sense, like it's, but what do you think, Logan, about that question, the value of human life and dignity? Where does it come from?
Well, I agree with everything you've just said, and if I may expand upon that, you brought up, for example, the conflicts in Ukraine, in Gaza. It's a sorry, very gravelly throat.
You're an actor. You're an actor.
But we only... The tragedy only makes the news because hundreds, thousands of people are dying. But if these were small border skirmishes, if only 20 people died at most, it wouldn't even make the news. But I think that's ridiculous. If 20 people died in Ottawa, that would be all over the news. We would probably be talking about it on this podcast. And you, Charlie, you were bringing up what's the rational, in quotations, explanation to the intrinsic value of a human life that doesn't invoke theistic justification. And I think the question collapses in on itself when you try and find, again, in quotations, the rational answer to that argument.
Right.
I think that there are certainly cases out there, there's certainly paradoxes, dilemmas in life where the answer is just, it is. I think love is certainly one of those cases where you cannot quantify love. I think when you try to quantify the value of human existence, that's when we fall into these problems of, it's okay for 20 people to die, because what if it was 100 people? Now that would be a tragedy, but 20 people, no, that's fine, because we can replace them. When you view humans as a commodity, they fail to be humans. You need to always look at the individual person for the human, and they have intrinsic value because they do. We cannot answer that question. To try and answer that question leads to all of these atrocities, and we just continue to chase each other in circles about this question. And I think the same goes for love. I think inherently at the root of love, it is, for lack of a better word, if you may, it is insanity. I cannot... It is.
It's not rational, is it?
No.
It's sometimes when we love, there's an irrationality to it. Yeah.
And I've said this to many people whom I love deeply on many levels, that I could say many things about why I love you, that you're funny, that you're smart, that you bring a lot of joy to my life. But the more I try and add reasons to that, the more I lessen the very being of love. I love you because I have to, because I am just intrinsically compelled to do so.
Like I can't help it.
I can't help it. I have to love you because I believe I have to love you, and I cannot believe anything else.
Interesting. And I've heard it put too, like, love is so interesting because it's like, it's a noun, but it's also a verb. And it's like, it's expressed through action, through words. And it's interesting because, like, again, like, I think you made a great point, Logan. It's, like, and it's like, it kind of goes in a circle, like, humans are valuable because they're humans, and it's sort of, I mean, it is a simple statement, but it's packed with a belief that humans are sacred and different and unique and special, and perhaps in a way that not everyone shares this belief, but in a way that is unique in nature. Of course, again, not everyone shares that belief. That there's obvious there's beliefs where humans are just another mammal on the planet, right? That there's not anything particularly interesting or special or unique about us. But I mean, I don't believe that, but I believe, again, in sort of more what you were saying, David, like the intrinsic value. For me, it is a struggle. Like, we all love our loved ones, of course. Oh yeah, our loved ones, of course. That's why they're called our loved ones. They're loved, and we formed mysterious bonds over the years with them that are inseparable, And I guess my question, and of course we're just theorizing here, like, can a computer or a machine, like, what's unique about the bond? And like, can a computer or machine, I mean, is it even theoretically possible to form such a bond, I wonder? And if it comes across that it has formed the bond, is it real, or is it programmed to make it look like it's bonded? What do you think, Logan?
This is probably a very simple response, and certainly a very biased one, because I have very angry peasant feelings about AI.
Angry peasant feelings.
But I think, in short, that no, computers, machines cannot truly love. They cannot truly feel the emotions that we do. And again, it feels like a wrong thing to say, but I think for no other reason than the computer is logically sound. It is very A plus B equals C, 1 + 1 = 2, whereas humans are insane. Insanity is really at the root of it all. Love is insane. What we feel is insane.
Beautifully insane.
Beautifully insane.
Maybe, yeah.
And I don't mean insane in a bad way in this case, but there's no rhyme or reason to it. And I think that since computers are, again, they're very rigid in their understanding, they aren't prone to human insanity. They cannot truly love the same way we do, in the way where I have to love you, not because I'm programmed, not because this is the logical outcome. It's just I have to. I could not explain it.
And yeah, and we're all sitting in this room, and we all think, humans are unique and special and deserve dignity. And David, you alluded to this, but there's certainly lots of people that exist, lots of other humans that have dignity and value and worth, but perhaps have power and money or influence that don't share that value clearly. And in the production, of course, in Frankenstein A.I, Victor Frankenstein, who invented the android, struggles in his own relationships with with his quote unquote loved ones, and so a lot of the play, of course, deals with like the AI android is, made in Victor's image, and Victor is not great at relationships. And, well, spoiler alert, neither is the AI android, even though it's trying to understand human relationships. And there's at one point in the script where the AI even asks its creator, well, what makes you so special as a human? Like, what makes you so unique as a human? What makes you different than me? And Victor's answer is, he says, well, I suppose it's my relationships, my friends, my family, my wife. But in the play, he's a bad example of giving, caring about those people, but that's his answer still. And that's fascinating. What is distinct about being a human? Is it our bonds? Is it our family? Like, what do you think, David? Yeah.
I think that there could be a compelling argument made that if you stripped away from any one of us all of the relationships that we have, I am a father, a husband, I am a child, a son, I'm a grandfather, I'm a brother, I'm a pastor, a minister, I'm a friend. If you stripped away all of those relationships and all those words that define and point to those relationships, that there would be almost nothing left. That there is a sense in which humans are nodes on a web of relationships, and there's all kinds of poetic and musical allusions to no man is an island and all of that kind of thing. I mean, I think it in some ways of thinking about the psychology and makeup of the human personality, that is quite literally true. That once you take away all the connections, we have to others, beginning from the very moment, well, before we're born, our connection in our mother's womb to our mothers, and then after that to parents and family and siblings, that there's almost nothing left. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
No,
but I think that I think you could spin a compelling argument that said there's not much left of a human being if you take away from them all of those things that are identified by those words that identify our relationships with one another. What's left? I don't know.
Wow.
I think that I in listening to the two of you talk about love and relationships, one of the things that occurs to me is that relationships are marked by reciprocity. That relationships that are healthy, relationships that are real, are relationships that are reciprocal. And so we have in all of literature and in theater, you guys are well aware, in literature and poetry and song, all kinds of tropes about unrequited love.
Right.
So I love this person doesn't love me back, and it brings me nothing but pain and sorrow, which is very interesting to the Shakespearean sonnet writer, or to the playwright, or to the writer of country and western laments.
I mean, there was a theme of that in The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, so much of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that when we're trying to think about what makes our relationships real, and could an artificial intelligence have a real relationship with a human being? I don't think so. I'm entirely on the side of those who say no, precisely because artificial intelligence is ultimately artificial. But because there's no reciprocity in the relationship. I may feel a certain warmth towards an avatar,
sure,
that I see online, or even there are now robots.
Maybe it's been with you for a couple years. Yeah. You've named it even. Yeah,
that's right. And most of us growing up had stuffed animals that we were very attached to.
I still do.
And we had exactly. And these become living creatures. But those relationships we have with our childhood stuffed animals are purely imaginary. The thing itself, the object that sleeps beside us in the bed, isn't a living being, and cannot in any way reciprocate.
But we project onto it that it does.
So there's a whole field of understanding of human emotions when we understand that we project imaginatively onto inanimate objects, love and affection and trust and so on, and those are healthy, right up to the point where we forget that the object of our affection is an inanimate object and not a living being. Right. Calvin and Hobbes is a wonderful example of a boyhood imagination. Stuffed animal is a living tiger, but only he sees it. And and then there's the stories in literature like the Velveteen Rabbit and Pinocchio about the Tin Man in the Wizard of Oz, about inanimate objects, puppets, tin men, velveteen animals that become real because they get a heart, because they become human by being loved. So wow, but those are all those stories are parables. They're metaphors for how the humanity functions in our relationships with one another. So I think that in terms of the AI, that for me one of the fundamental differences between any relationship that I might have with the computer tool that is artificial intelligence, is that it's not a reciprocal relationship, and that a healthy human relationship is a reciprocal relationship. I love people, but if they don't want anything to do with me, then that love is unhealthy. If the love, the friendship, the affection, the care for the other is reciprocated, then it's a beautiful, wonderful, unique thing, and
it grows.
And it does over many years. I'm almost 38 years married, and I can attest in my own life to the way that love can grow and change and evolve. The love between my wife and I is different now than it was 38 years ago. But it is, I would argue, richer, deeper, and made more powerful by the length of time that it has been a defining characteristic in both of our lives.
Right.
So is it possible for a machine of any level of complexity to replace that or to replicate that? I think the answer is no.
And we've almost seen too many good movies, quite frankly, where the machine is emotional and makes connections and bonds. Like I'm thinking of like WALL-E, and just there's like, so we imagine that the machine can, I think. And the stuffed animal thing it really got me thinking, like something's not reciprocal, but for some reason we imagine that it is. So like you can recall like cuddling up with your stuffed animal, and it's giving you comfort. You project that it's comforting you because you feel like you need that. And I can only imagine if you had an AI in your home for 2 years and you went through some tough times and it was there every day and you talked to it every day. I can only imagine, despite what you just said, David, that it isn't reciprocating feelings. That's for sure. But I can only imagine that you would project onto it that it does. No, not my AI. You don't understand. My AI cares about me, and I've got the proof. And you print out all the readouts and see what it said and see what it, you could totally. But again, is it programmed to do that? Like you could probably. I'm sure someone could program an AI friend or an AI boyfriend or girlfriend, and it might satisfy some loneliness in the moment. And, but again, it is artificial, and it's not really, it's not the same as what you were describing, David, Yeah.
I know that there's a whole field of robotics right now. In places like Japan, they're actually becoming much more common, where, various kinds of robotic animals, for example, robots that look like little dogs or little cats.
Oh yeah,
and they bark and they respond to your voice, and you can do things like, "Here's Fido," and go sit down, and they mimic the activity of a pet.
Yeah, I've seen some videos.
And they are being used to alleviate loneliness and isolation, particularly among seniors.
Wow.
And so there's there would be an argument some people might make. Well, here you've got this little robot dog that has an AI program in it that allows it to act, to respond to the person, the human being in the apartment.
Gives them interaction with something.
And that makes that person less lonely.
Wow.
And feel less isolated. And I think that the effect is true. I think that, I wouldn't question that those people who are otherwise socially isolated are less so, because they have an inanimate robotic dog that provides them with some interaction, and that in fact a stuffed animal, which doesn't even do that, is very much a solace and a comfort to a lonely child. I can
totally believe it as well, actually, and of course it begs the big larger question, like, why is there so much loneliness, and how are we failing as human beings that there's like such loneliness that we need to invent machines to like remedy it?
That's exactly right. And I think where you go in that line of thinking is to realize that those robotic dogs, or even a stuffed animal, is that a child loves so much that they rub the fur right off it.
Right. Of course.
That those non-human or inanimate objects are second best. They are they do not fulfill everything that a loving parent, a loving sibling, a good friend can do. So they are at best second best.
Right.
And that we understand at a level of mature thought that they don't reciprocate. We all understand that we have close and intimate relationships with people, and indeed with other parts of God's creation, like a dog, a cat, a parrot, and even the way we feel about a particular tree that we climbed when we were a child, or sitting by a particular body of water, a lake or a stream. And those things hold memories for us. They move us. They comfort us. but I understand that my relationship with my wife and my children, my relationships with my friends are different in kind than my relationship with my dog.
Right.
And the relationship that I have with my dog,
or your neighbor, or
well, and the relationship I have with my neighbor is different than the relationship with my dog. My neighbor is a human being, and I'm able to talk with my neighbor.
Right.
I can trust that when I talk with my neighbor, my friend, my brother, my sister, that those human beings hear and understand from a shared experience of being human when I'm talking with them about my feelings or what I'm going through. And I can have that same conversation with a dog, but with my dog, it's a monologue.
Yeah.
With my friends, it's a dialogue.
Right.
So it's a reciprocal relationship.
Right.
And that's part of the mystery. That's part of the irreducibility of human relationships. And there are lots of things that are replacements for those human relationships, pets, robotic dogs, stuffed animals.
Yeah.
But they're all replacements.
Yeah, like they're not the
for
ideal.
something else.
Right. Yeah. What do you think, Logan? A lot was said here. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't even I'm still taking all that in.
I know, huh?
But going back to what you said about human relationships being reciprocal, I think a very fundamental aspect of that, and I was talking about this in the car with you, Charlie, is that, I don't know if I'd say a core aspect, but certainly one of the many fundamentals of human relations is forgiveness. If you are with somebody for a very, very long time, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much you try and do right by them, it's just inevitable. We all make mistakes. We all put our foot in our mouths. And I think that forgiveness is a very core aspect of that, of being able to look beyond that, say, you know what, that's in the past. I messed up, you messed up. We both said a lot of hurtful things. It's okay. We can move past this. And I don't think that AI can replicate that for a lot of reasons, but for the lack of AI even being aware that it has been wronged, I don't think a computer can really know that it's been wronged. A computer can't really feel that.
Because there's pain involved with
exactly.
being wronged. Yeah.
And a computer just cannot feel that. So sure, you can say to ChatGPT, hey, I messed up, I'm sorry. And ChatGPT will say, oh, no worries, don't sweat it. But it's a machine. It doesn't actually know that it can be wrong. It's just programmed to say that because it's the right response. Whereas with any long-term relationship of any kind, I'm sure you've definitely had a fair share of arguments with your friends, with your family, with your loved ones, but you still love them. You're still able to forgive them, to move past that. It's still, it is love. It is genuine.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something that's really important. That forgiveness is absolutely a core element of any healthy human relationship, and being able to forgive one another in a marriage, in a family, in a friendship, being able to forgive coworkers at work for mistakes that are made, and being forgiven, the experience of being forgiven, is enormously powerful. And I agree, is something that an artificial intelligence cannot do in a way that is genuine. I had the good fortune this morning when I was driving in my car, of listening to an interview on the radio with a professor of computational linguistics.
Wow.
Computational linguistics is the area of scientific inquiry where linguistics and computer science come together, and it is the place from which these large language models that are behind ChatGPT and the whole drive towards generative AI.
Right.
That's what we're talking about here, is generative AI, where you ask a question or provide a prompt and you get 500 words back or 1,000 words back. And this professor said, what a large language model is a predictive computer program that says, when you have this word, statistically, the most likely word to come next is this word. And with these two words, statistically, we would add this third word.
Ooh.
And so when you say, I have messed up, I apologize, the computer language goes, apology. Okay, so how do I respond to an apology to an apology?
Yeah.
Well, statistically, when I look at all of the data that I have been fed, that it has been fed, the first word is That's. Second word is okay. Third word is I. Fourth word is forgive. Fifth word is you.
Mhm.
It is, as this computer scientist, computational linguistic put it, a synthetic text extrusion machine,
Mhm.
which
Oh my.
I love. I
Wow.
think that's a great. She said it is a machine that extrudes text, and it's synthetic text because it is put together not from any sense of understanding of the interaction, but rather on a purely statistical, letter by letter, word for word basis. That's what generative AI is,
Mhm.
and any competent computer scientist will tell you that.
Mhm.
So when we think that the machine is accepting our apology, or that it is apologizing to us if it says, I'm sorry, I got that wrong,
Yeah.
that's us having a monologue with ourselves.
Mhm.
Right. Oh, that's so fascinating. Back to that. Yeah. That's so fascinating.
And if I may, stepping a little bit away from the machines, but focusing on forgiveness, speak a little more to the Christian understanding. I don't know if it would be right to say that is the core of our relationship with God, but it is certainly a very fundamental understanding of God's love, that we have sinned a great deal against him, but in spite of everything, unconditionally, he loves us and forgives us. And what does the Lord's Prayer say? To forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors, that we are instructed, that we are to as a blanket understanding, to forgive others the way God forgives us.
Mm-hmm. And that in fact, the way that our faith works is that our forgiveness of the hurts that others have caused us is a response
Mhm.
to being forgiven ourselves.
Right.
First of all, by God.
You know what it's
So
like.
God's grace, God's forgiveness is not contingent on us then forgiving others the way that some people might read the Lord's Prayer. Right. It's entirely the other way around.
Right. Oh, you mean like some people interpret it like, oh, I won't be forgiven by God if I don't forgive others. So
Because I have
utilitarian
to measure up to.
Right.
There is a standard, or to use some of the theological, I have to buy my way into heaven.
Right.
That there is a certain, that God's grace is conditional.
But you're
God's
saying it's the
love
other way around.
It's precisely
the
the other way
example has
around.
been set.
I mean, I think that's the whole point of what Jesus tried to do in his life and in his ministry and in the death and resurrection. All of that is I think, to show that the love and the grace, the forgiveness of God is primary. And everything that we do as people of faith is in response to that realization that badly as I have conducted myself over the years, I am still loved. And that I have, that the only appropriate response to that experience of grace, that experience of forgiveness, is then to turn to the people around me and try to offer that same grace to them.
Right. Brimming over with that in a sense, like it
flows out.
You're flowing out. Yeah. Do you think, do you think you've been in ministry, a while right now? And like, do you see a decline in forgiveness in general? Like, I feel like it's so rare and it's so meaningful and it's undeserved, of course. And do you see a decline in apologies and forgiveness? I mean, of course, there's like societal, like level type stuff, but then there's also just in interpersonal relationships. You are listening to Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. We'll return in a moment with the rest of our discussion.
Ninth Hour Theatre Company presents Beauty Will Save the World, a brand new musical audio drama for the whole family. Embark on a seafaring adventure and thought-provoking cautionary tale about the importance of passing on beauty to the younger generation, where relationships once lost are found again, when tested to choose what they stand for and who they will stand with.
Beauty will save the world! I have felt it! I've lived it!
Laughter, action, and tears, reminding us about the sacred things that make life worth living. To listen to full episodes or exclusive behind-the-scenes content, go to beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
I want to more than just survive. I want to hope and feel alive. I want
to live, truly live. beautywillsavetheworld.ca.
And now, back to the discussion. do you see a decline in apologies and forgiveness? I mean, of course, there's like societal, like level type stuff, but then there's also just in, interpersonal relationships. I don't know. Like, do you see a decline?
No.
Okay.
At the level of interpersonal relationships, I don't see. I don't think, like, generally speaking, that we are becoming less and less able to forgive one another.
Okay.
I think that politically, I think that at the level of political discourse, the divisions are becoming more hard set.
Right.
That there is less communication across ideological lines.
Right.
That there is dehumanization and demonizing going on, where the people who are the people who disagree with you aren't just opponents across the debate table. They're enemies.
They're immoral. They're stupid.
And there's a huge difference between somebody who is an intellectual opponent or an opponent on the other side of the House of Commons and somebody who is my enemy.
Right.
And so at the political level, yes, I think there's a lot less of that than there was 50 years or 30 years ago. At the level of intimate human relationships, I think it goes up and down. I think it's pretty constant. And I think that real, true, genuine forgiveness is rare. I think that most of us have, and this is why, because real forgiveness offered is always a gift. It is never a transaction. And we live by transactional rules. Even in our intimate relationships, even in our married relationships, in the relationships with our children, in the relationships with our closest friends, we still have expectations that I offer this and you will give me back that. I show up for you, you show up for me. I say nice things about the clothing you're wearing. You're going to say nice things about the clothing that I'm wearing.
Compliment you only to get a compliment back.
Well, that's that, and that is, and we don't. It's so ubiquitous that we don't realize that we are living in a transactional world where we have expectations.
Yeah.
In making an offer or in a statement, or there's all kinds of psychological language around that. But there is another economy, right? There's the economy that is transactional, which is both literally the money economy that we, or the barter economy. These are transactions,
right?
But we bring that way of thinking into our personal lives. But there is a gift economy that simply doesn't count the cost, and that.
But there is a cost.
Yes.
Yeah. To someone.
There is a cost. Offering forgiveness. Genuinely offering forgiveness to somebody who has hurt you is costly. It isn't easy.
Perhaps irrational too. Like it's sort of like, why do that? It's
right.
It's mysterious or something.
Right.
And it does something in the, it changes you, it changes them.
Imagine the difference between offering true forgiveness to somebody who has come to you with a repentant heart,
right, and
said, "Please forgive me."
Yeah, that's one scenario. Yeah.
What about offering that same unconditional forgiveness to somebody who has not asked for it,
and they're not sorry,
and who does not acknowledge that they have harmed you?
That's the hard one. So there is a cost to those kinds of gifts, and like these are, for me, the defining characteristics of our human relationships is that they have the capacity to transcend a tit for tat transactional approach to life, right,
and open us up to a world in which certain things are given away for free, regardless of the cost, to the person offering them, and they come to us as free gifts with no strings attached. Love. If love is real, if love is the best definition of itself, then it is a gift. One of my favorite definitions of love is putting the well-being of another person ahead of your own well-being. It is not a noun; it's a verb. It's acting for the well-being of another person, even at the cost of your own well-being. When you see someone putting themselves out, putting themselves at danger, putting themselves at risk, giving up their evening, getting up out of bed because the baby's crying. Right. Classic paradigmatic example in human relationships is the love of a parent for a child. Because the infant can't reciprocate.
Yeah, that's an interesting example.
Not in the same way.
Non-reciprocal, that's true. In that time of the life.
When your baby cries in the middle of the night, you get up out of bed and you go and you do what you need to do to comfort that child. And you do that, and you may not feel all warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, like there's no reward at the other end other than maybe some sleep.
Exactly. And so that's why that particular relationship, the parent to the infant child in human relationships is the paradigmatic one. It's the example of self-sacrificing love. But of course, from a faith perspective, self-sacrificing love is one of the definitions of God. So
do you think our relationship like with a creator, with God, is similar to the helpless infant parent dynamic, or a toddler parent dynamic, or a teenager parent dynamic?
I think it's more like a rebellious teenager.
You know,
dynamic.
Well, the parable of the prodigal son, eh?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I wanted to talk as well about, this has been just awesome and stimulating, and I think it can naturally flow into vocations. AI, vocations, and I've certainly had many conversations with people about whether, you know, which jobs will be replaced and who will be the first to go, and you know, many people have made compelling arguments that AI is good for dull, dangerous, or dirty jobs that humans would rather not do, that humans would be better off not doing for safety reasons, for all sorts of reasons, time, you know, using your time for better ways to things that you would rather pursue. So there, and I guess I wouldn't debate that at all, other than the DeLacy family in the script. It's a family in the story that chooses to live off grid and enjoys the sweat running down their back. They enjoy physical labor, and they feel connected to the earth, and they argue that it makes them feel human. And I guess that's a compelling argument as well, to not give up the dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs to AI. But today, though, with you guys, I want to talk about vocations that are not dull, dangerous, or dirty, although maybe perhaps one of them is. I want to talk about vocations that have an intrinsic human aspect to it that is it's just so obvious that a human is the quality of the human in this vocation matters. And I think I would categorize this as like teachers. Teachers are highly relational. The good teachers are, at least. Ministers, highly relational vocation. Artists, relational in the sense of, like on our last podcast, we talked about what is art, and an artist being conveying emotion or morals from one living soul to another, and another is receiving what the artist is laying out, like emotionally, spiritually. Rather, and I don't mean, so I'm defining artist a particular way, right? You know, so as to be on the same page. Nurses, social workers. It's basically your job is people, like your job with a minister, with a teacher, with nurses, with social workers, particularly those four, and even lawyers to some degree. Your job is people, relationship. And so I've heard arguments that, you know, AI would what do you mean? You know, AI would make a great doctor, and it is a compelling argument that an AI surgeon doing your surgery perhaps maybe is good, or a diagnostic AI. I see no argument against that. You know, I sure, you know, great. However, like, you know, a nurse, fine, an AI could be a nurse, but I'm asking and I read an article that an AI gave a sermon. Okay, so, and it was a great sermon apparently, and it, you know, pulls from all the, you know, and could AI offer up an awesome prayer for your needs? I'm sure it could. But what I want to get to with you guys though is there something missing though, even if the technical aspect of the AI being a nurse or a minister or a social worker or a teacher, fine. But is there something missing that is intrinsic to those professions, those vocations, that is irreplaceable? That the nurse that looks me in the eye before the surgery and says, you could see in her eyes that she has a son, you know, she has loved ones too. She knows someone who's been through surgery. Maybe she's been through surgery herself. it's same with the minister, looking you in the eyes, knowing pain themselves, knowing what it's like to lose a loved one or whatever. Like, is there something about those professions, those vocations that are just special, and like, sure, you could replace people with AI in those professions, but is there something missing? Is there something that will be lost, even if the AI is really good at coming across as a real person? Thoughts? What do you think, Logan?
Well, I think you said lawyers was on that list.
Lawyers, artists.
I think you're right that lawyers will keep their job because they're the only class of men who can argue to keep their job.
Yeah, that's a good one.
No, but to give a more serious response, I don't know if it's even strictly relational, although I do think that's a core aspect of these jobs that AI can't replace. But I think, going back to, I guess, a reoccurring theme of mine, just insanity, is that a lot of these jobs, a lot of these classes of individuals, if you may, they're able to speak to the core of human insanity and to sort of make light of it in a way. Philosophers, ministers, artists. I think to The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus, where he writes, if the world were clear, art would not exist. And I think that that can broadly be applied to these classes of individuals, to philosophers, to ministers, to artists, that they are here to make... They are here because the world is not clear, because we are all insane. And again, AI just can't get to the bottom of that because it's 1 + 1 = 2, A + B = C. It is not insane in the way that we are.
It's ones and zeros.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really helpful observation and insight. The word that is in my head during this conversation is mystery, with a capital M.
Right.
Is that the world isn't clear. I might phrase that the world is full of mysteries, full of mystery and full of mysteries. It is not the world, the creation, the reality that we experience, whether that is in nature or in relationships with the other human beings, or in other kinds of relationships with other living beings. It's full of mystery. It's full of things we don't understand, and probably things that we cannot understand, because the mystery is truly beyond us.
Right.
One of the tenets of almost any religious faith, as I understand them, but also most philosophical systems that purport to be not religious, is that they acknowledge that there's a limit to what we can express in words. That our language gets us so far, and whether that language is the language of poetry, the language of mathematics, it gets us a long ways, but it doesn't get us all the way to the end. There's always something that is beyond language, that is beyond thought, that is beyond our abilities, the tools we have to understand. And so there is mystery.
Faith is one of those things. I mean, even the Catholic Church says the mystery of the faith.
Yeah.
It's right in the,
Yeah. And so I think that there's a great deal of mystery in the world, and every human being at their core is a mystery. And so could an AI replace a nurse or a teacher, a pastor, a doctor? AI can do parts of any job.
Sure.
Well, the part of a medical doctor or a nurse that is diagnostic, that is considering the symptoms, looking at the blood pressure, looking at the X-ray, looking at the CAT scan, looking at the blood work, and says, okay, now I understand something about why this person is in pain, or why they're dizzy, or whatever it might be.
Right.
I think that computer programs of all sorts can be enormously helpful.
Yep. For specific tasks.
In doing that.
Yeah.
But sitting down at my bedside in the hospital and taking my hand and saying, I'm sorry, it's 4th stage cancer. Do I want a machine to do that? No.
Can you imagine the AI from the play doing that?
The machine,
no, not at all.
the machine can do the diagnosis, but those professions that you've articulated, Charley, they, to be done well, they depend on, I think, 2 things. The first is that as a patient, as a parishioner, as a student, I need to feel that my doctor or nurse, my pastor, my teacher, sees me and hears me.
And
That I am seen and heard in
cares.
in the way that we use that. Not just there you are, I can see you. but
Right.
No, I see you.
See you.
Right? I see you. I want to be seen. I want to be heard.
Mm.
As a patient, I want to be seen and heard as a human being.
Mm.
And I want all of my humanness
Right.
to be in the mind and heart of the person who is then diagnosing my malady and trying to prescribe some course of action.
Because I'm scared pre-surgery.
I'm scared.
And I want to be seen that I'm scared
I'm
and
worried
understood.
I'm worried about how my family or my friends
Yeah.
are gonna understand this.
Mm.
So to be seen and heard, and I don't know that an AI can do that.
Right.
An AI can take data and can read it and can interpret it,
Mm.
but can an AI see me? And then the second thing which goes along with that is trust.
Mm.
If I'm seen and heard, I'm far more likely than to trust
Mm.
that the person that I am sitting across from has my best interests at heart, is somebody that I can relate to, is somebody that is worthy of my trust. And then I will be a better student.
Mm.
I will be a better patient. I will be a better parent. I will be a better spouse.
Mm.
I will be a better client of the lawyer if I trust.
That's 100%.
And
It's an important
we
thing.
can trust an artificial intelligence to do really well what it has been trained to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
only that.
Specific tasks.
And that's why I think that for example, the computational linguist that I heard on the radio earlier today said she has no argument with using AI in medical diagnosis, in interpreting medical images, for example, because those machine algorithms, they don't get tired. They don't have to take their glasses off and pinch their nose. They don't get thirsty. They will continue, and the more they do the work, the better they get at it, as one would expect a human doctor would. So, in combination with then the intuitive skill of a good human doctor,
Right.
Those kinds of artificial intelligence that have specific diagnostic kind of tasks are a huge benefit to the patients,
Yes.
as well as facilitating the work of the doctor.
And I could see AI being a useful teaching assistant, a useful research assistant for a
Right.
lawyer.
Absolutely.
Lots of good support for an artist. In fact, the playwright George used AI to help write the play. I mean, again, like an assistant. And of course, I mean, of course, and we're talking about replacing the minister, that replacing the vocational person. And what I hear you saying, David, which is great, that there's mystery, and Logan, it's not clean. Like human life isn't clean. The world isn't clean. It's not neat and tidy and black and white as we'd like it to be, as simplistic as we'd like it to be. And I find, like there's something, fine. You got a great sermon from the AI, but isn't there something more to faith than getting a great sermon? Isn't there something more to, isn't there something more to, something deeper to getting healthcare? Like, isn't there something deeper that, to be seen, to be heard? Isn't there something, fine, the AI has entertained you, but isn't there something more to art, to the creation of art, to the sharing of art? Something more, something mysterious, something almost ineffable. Like, how do you even pinpoint it down or describe it? And and there's something more to ministering to somebody. There's just something more to it that's mysterious and improvised almost. And
When COVID hit, we pivoted. Everything that we had been doing in person, we began to do online, or everything that we could do online.
Right.
We had doctor's appointments online. We had coffee dates with our friends online. We went to church online.
Yeah.
The minute the lockdown restrictions were lifted, we couldn't wait to get back to doing those things in person.
Right.
And the inevitable part of that is to be in the same room.
Yeah.
Right.
Live theater. That's why live theater is great.
Having a conversation with my doctor on Zoom is great. If I can't go and sit in the room with him. But if I can go and sit in the room with him, then that's what I want. And for sure, having coffee with my friends, or having dinner with my friends, or going to church. These are things that I can do online, and there is there is certainly convenience to that, and there are benefits to it. And so if I'm a shut-in in a nursing home and I can't get to church, then going to church online is a worthy second choice alternative. But if I can, then I want to be in the presence.
I like how you worded that, and it comes back to what you were saying earlier. It's like, the stuffed animal, the AI pet. It's not to just sort of dump on it all, like, oh, that's all garbage and trash, and it helps no one. No. As you just pointed out again with these examples, they're okay. They're second best though. There's always a better version. There's something better to have a real relationship. But if none exist, fine. I guess the second best will do. If no teacher exists to teach these students, I guess an AI will do, but it's not as good. Like there's something more to learning, and there's something more to education than just taking in information and regurgitating it on a test. There's something more to learning. There's something more to engaging in your faith. There's something more to creating art. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I like that. I like that you're sort of spelling out, like, these are great tools and they work for certain people, but like there's something better though. There is something better.
So what do you think that more is? Like, what is that? What is that? I agree 100%. And I just had a word pop into my head, but I'm just curious. What do you?
Yeah. Deep question. What do you think the more is, Logan?
Again, I don't mean to give a non-response, but I think that could be a great many things. I think the more might be another one of those mysteries where there isn't one particular more. It's always something to other people. And if I may deviate a bit from this, but still sticking to the whole idea of we'll use AI if we have to. I think there's a lot of people out there who aren't too terribly concerned with the more, and they kind of just go through the motions of life. And that's why AI and everything being digital is very attractive to them, because it's convenient that I can just do everything at my fingertips, and they don't care about the more. They don't care about meeting in person at church or at coffee, or even meeting their doctor in person. That doesn't matter to them. They just go through the motions. I have to see my doctor because I have to. I have to go to school because I have to. And if AI provides a more, just convenient experience, well, then I will do that. Who cares about the more? These are the things that are happening in the here and now, and I need to do them, I guess.
So there's a valuing of convenience there and comfort, and interesting.
As you were talking, Charlie, thank you. I think you're exactly right, and I think that's sad. Because I when you were talking just a moment ago, Charlie, you took me right back to some of my my elementary school teachers. Oh, and I realized that the more for me, for the teachers that I remember, the ones that I respect, is not that they were good at teaching English or that they were good at science, but that I learned something about being human from them. I learned from the best teachers how to be human. And my church youth group leader, my Sunday school teachers, the camp counselors, the nurses and doctors. I mean, less so, because my relationship with them is closer to a utilitarian one. Right. But particularly those professions like teaching, pastoring, where the more is somehow tied up with learning how to be a better human being, or learning how to be human, just how to be human. Anyways, that's just that popped into my head, and it's an experimental thought. So
no. I think that's key. I mean, the AI in the play spends the entire play trying to become more human, learn how to be human, and not and failing at doing so. Again, like what you just said, I think is profound in the sense that that's certainly something AI could not show us, like how to be human, how to be better humans, like, or how to be human, I guess, even in the messiness and sloppiness of it all. I think that's so true. The more for me, I think, as I was thinking, because I didn't know, but now I think, now that I've connected all the dots a bit, is relationship, I think, is the more, I think. Yeah. Like real relationship, real bonding, something so precious about relationship. Yeah. Vertical relationships and horizontal ones too, Yeah.
Yeah. And I know this is a big theme in the play too, where it's the sort of Victor and the AI chasing each other in circles. I need you to be the better representation of humanity, but the AI wants to learn how to be human, and they kind of...
Right.
It's all circular, and I find that's a similar thing with, as we were saying, that there's people who are concerned with the more and people who are not, but we're all... weirdly enough, on the same journey in that regards, where these two camps of people will say, I am living the life I do because that is what a human is supposed to do. I am living in the digital age. I am surrendering to AI and everything because that makes me a more well-adjusted human, because I have everything more under control now. Everything's more convenient. Everything's more efficient. While the other camp, the ones concerned with the more, if you may, they say that life is messy and that's what being a human is about. It's making these mistakes. It's getting into arguments. It's putting your foot in your mouth. That's what being human is. Everybody is trying to be human. We're just all going about different ways of doing it.
I want more, Logan. More. I think, meaning, right? I want meaning. I want relationship. I want meaning. Humans, all humans are meaning making. They make meaning for themselves, even if in the absence of meaning. Wow, this has been a really fascinating discussion, guys. Yeah, I love it. You never know where a conversation is going to go. I want to leave us with a few thoughts, and then and then I want to hear from each of you, like what you want to leave listeners with as maybe a final thought, or just something that they can, ponder as the episode closes. I read this book by Brennan Manning. He's one of my favorite authors, and he articulates in one of the chapters that, theology and the mysteries of life, the weight of God, all these things, and I would argue the messiness, and all these other, the mystery, the more, argues that in addition to, of course, in addition to theologians and philosophers, we need artists, mystics, and clowns to unpack and give us that and sort of unravel and stir the mystery and the messiness, that the mystery of life, the mystery of all things. We need artists because they're going to be creative. They're going to engage people in a communal fashion. They're going to tell stories that get to the bottom of the messiness or the more. And then mystics, of course, because mystics love mystery and embrace it and ask all the questions. And clowns, a surprising third group of people. Clowns, I would argue, could mean comedians. It could mean entertainers. But basically that idea of sense of humor and making fun of ourselves, both as an individual, as in a species, being able to laugh at the absurdities of life and the messinesses of life. And I just loved how he unpacks that artists, mystics, and clowns are needed to, and in there is, of course, artists. In there is some of these vocations, like I would argue a minister, is a mystic, is maybe a clown sometimes too, making people laugh from the front, like whatever you need to do, like to minister to someone, right? Or to get them, thinking or whatever, So I want to close by reading a quote by C.S. Lewis, and then I'm going to throw it over to you guys to have your final thoughts about this wonderful conversation. This quote by C.S. Lewis is from his book, The Weight of Glory. And I think it wraps up our conversation quite well. C.S. Lewis writes, "It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest, most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. All day long, we are in some degree helping each other to one or the other of these destinations. It is in the light of these overwhelming possibilities, it is with the awe and the circumspection proper to them, that we should conduct all of our dealings with one another, all friendships, all loves, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, whom we work with, marry, snub, and exploit, immortal horrors, or everlasting splendors. Good old C.S. Lewis.
Gotta love him.
That's lovely.
It's just he unpacks like the human condition.
You have
and
never talked to a mere mortal.
mere mortal.
Never.
Going back to your initial like that worldview of people are intrinsically valuable and deserve dignity because they're humans, because they're not mere mortals. You know, I just love that. I love C.S. Lewis. Who am I kidding? But yeah. Final thoughts, Logan. What do you want to leave listeners with? You know, from our conversation today.
Well, I know we were talking about this in the car, but the brain, that thing in our head, it's a Lovecraftian horror. We cannot understand it. We are trying to, we still don't. And when we have interactions like this, it is these two Lovecraftian horrors, these two unimaginable beings who can't even understand themselves crashing into each other. So crazy things tend to happen, but I think life would be a lot easier, not simple, but a lot easier if we showed each other the same grace that God showed us and show ourselves the same grace that God shows us and to forgive ourselves and to forgive others. Again, life's not clear. Everybody is going on their own path, whether you are a more person or whether you are not, or whether you think you are a more person or not.
A more person.
Exactly. But I think that at the basis of it all, we're all going on our own journey that we don't particularly understand ourselves. And so the most we can do for each other is to forgive ourselves and forgive others.
Well said. Thanks, Logan. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And David, you?
This last couple of minutes, I've just been thinking of my nephew. I have a nephew who has Down syndrome, and he will never live independently. He will never be able to feed himself. He will never have a paying job. From a utilitarian point of view, his life is clearly of less value than either of his parents or his uncle or his cousins. And yet he is not less valuable. And his value it cannot be measured. He is just as capable of both giving and receiving love as any of his more capable family members who love him and care for him. And I'm just reminded of on the broader scale then, the quote that the measure of a society is how well it cares for its most vulnerable members.
Right.
And so the forgiveness, compassion, loving kindness, the ability to love, the ability to extend friendship, all of these things are what make life worth living. These are the things that enrich our lives. And my life is richer because I have my nephew in my life, even though he and I don't have these kinds of conversations with one another, but we are able to love one another. And that love is just as real as any other love that I have in my life. So there isn't a utilitarian way to measure these things. These things are either whole or they're not present. They're either reciprocated or they're not real.
Reminds me of Henry Nouwen and his working in group homes. Yeah, he learned a lot from that. Yeah. One of my favorite authors. Thanks, David. That is so wonderful to have you on the podcast today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm your host, Charlie, and this has been the Telling the Story podcast. Thanks for listening. This has been Telling the Story, a podcast dedicated to exploring faith, spirituality, arts, and culture, hosted by Ninth Hour Theatre Company in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for our podcast series discussing a brand new theatrical work, Frankenstein A.I. You can listen again to this episode and all our podcasts through YouTube, Spotify, and directly on our website, ninthhour.ca. Be sure to follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter to be the first to receive exciting announcements, opportunities, and behind-the-scenes content. We hope you'll join us again soon on Telling the Story.